Welcome to the Bachelor Universe podcast. I am your host, Jim Alexander, and today on the show, we will talk about episode 8 of The Bachelor that happened tonight. And we will go over, go over all that happened and on the hometown dates, the big hometown dates. That's usually the turning point of the season where final 4 women are left, and that's when it gets real after hometown dates. So recap the episode and look to next week's overnights. So let's get to it. So the 4 contestants that remain were Raven, Rachel, Vanessa, and Corinne. Those were the 4 hometown dates. And the first hometown date starts off with Raven in Hoxie, Arkansas, and she basically meets Nick somewhere in the woods by the swamps, basically. Not New Orleans kind of swamps, but not much better than that. And she picks him up in a 3-wheeler, like this cool 3-wheeler. She rides up. Apparently this girl's got some spunk to her, and it's a bit of a daredevil too. And she picks him up, and they scoot away in a 3-wheeler. And they head to this weird, when they have these towns that have these water, these, I don't even know what you call them, these, I'm just probably missing the word right now, these big domes that have like water inside for an entire town. It seemed like it was either that or one of those kind of metal round structures they have on the farms where they keep the hay and all that other stuff for the animals. So they were going up the ladder on one of those things, and they're just hanging out on top. And then a squad car rolls up, and the sirens go on, and they appear to be in trouble. So they come down, and Nick's being questioned. He apparently doesn't even have an ID on him, and the cops giving him shit, basically. And Nick does not know how to go about it. He's trying to explain and stutter and mumble like he does and getting out of this situation. Raven's kind of a bystander. And what happens next is it's revealed that it is her brother, actually. So that was her brother, the cop that pulled him up. So a nice little prank by Raven and the production there to just get Nick scared, apparently. So Raven, quite the prankster. No one's getting arrested, and all good. So they go head to her house and meet the rest of the family. They met the brother. Now it's up to meeting the parents. And as we know, it's been documented that Raven has a father who dealt with lung cancer. So that was actually mentioned on the last episode in her alone time with Nick. So they do meet the father, and they had news for Raven because she's been gone. Apparently, after the last round of testing, news is that Raven's father is cancer-free, which is great news. On a silly show like that, it's good to hear a real-life story, and someone being cured of cancer is always a really good thing, and no difference in this situation. So good news for Raven and her family. Her father's cancer-free. So that's basically what kind of adds some heart to this whole situation. I mean, because prior to that, they were goofing around, getting fake arrested, rolling around in the mud. They literally rolled around in like this mud water I don't know what it was. Those places usually where birds like feed, like look for food in these like swampish grasslands. Yeah, that was no fun, but this is good stuff. Good news, at least. So then, the funniest thing was, like, going back to it a bit, when Nick comes in, he kind of introduces him, "Hi, I'm Nick," uh, which is probably a word in a sentence no parent wants to hear. This guy's done it too many times. He's been on too many of these hometown dates. Um, so going back to it, Nick does have a chat with her father, and he seems like a polite man. He gives a bit of a mild warning to Nick about being serious with Raven. So then Raven talks to her father, and there's this emotional moment where he talks about just her getting married, whether to Nick or anyone else, that he will be able to walk her down the aisle, and she didn't think that would have been a possibility, months back when he was diagnosed, and that she wouldn't have, had anyone replace him walking her down the aisle. And there's just this real genuine moment between a father and a daughter, that can be replicated, even in reality TV. That meant something, that was something powerful. So it seems like overall they had a great family, tight knit, just normal people, and you don't see that much on a Bachelor sometimes. So then, as Nick is about to leave, Raven's kind of teetering and debating if she should say that she loves him, and she ultimately bites her lip and does not do anything and doesn't say it. So that could be a major downfall for her when it comes to the final three and going forward. Her saying that she doesn't love him was that moment that should have been a clincher, and it's really something that didn't happen. So she kind of messed it up right there. Now, next hometown is Rachel. So they go to Dallas, Texas for Rachel, who we know is the next Bachelorette. So the cat's out of the bag. That's already announced. Rachel's a Bachelorette. So this is like the most pointless part of the show that really means nothing. And the first order of business is a visit to the church, to her church. Now, seems sweet and kind of a bonding thing, but on a first date, a hometown date to church, a little bit too easy. And clearly, he goes to a church he's never been to. And Nick legitimately is the only white guy there, and they do make mention and point it out. So looks like he had a good time for what he said, but it looked more like it was a bit of an uncomfortable / awkward time. He just didn't know what to do there, or he felt a bit out of place. Seemed like it. But yeah, that's a pretty gutsy date to go to a church right away. I don't know. So then maybe that was just a prep before meeting her family. So her father was not going to be there. He had business to attend to, and probably the business is, if you dump my daughter, I will put you in front of the jury and create a court case for you and get you in trouble, Nick, right? That's not probably what's going to happen, and didn't, as she became the Bachelorette. She probably won out better off in the long run. But they do meet her mother and her brother-in-law and sister, and those were the people at the house. So that was like the main kind of delegation there. And Nick did talk to the sister, who interestingly has a white husband. So this family is not like opposed or not used to interracial dating and relationships. So Nick isn't really a new thing, even though it's the first time Rachel brought someone that's white home. But her sister's married to a white guy. So that's an interesting conversation there. And that sister-in-law's, I mean, the brother-in-law, he was kind of goofy. He just kind of, I'm thinking who he reminds me of. He definitely reminded me of some sort of actor or television character. Just kind of a goofy approach. I think he called, if I'm not mistaken, he called Nick a white. Yeah. Something like Zach Galifianakis would have said and said in the Hangover movie. So it was just kind of an interesting, odd encounter. Then the conversation with the mother was even more interesting in a sense where she was just really stern and was serious but fair, I think, with Nick. There's a lot of mention, and it was just, I thought it was a bit pointless about racism and dating interracially, like as if they were trying to like point out that issue and force it upon. Just let it happen. Obviously, the sister is dating not dating with a white guy, so it shouldn't be an issue for this family. So I don't know why the production and the show kind of pushed a whole idea of interracial dating and just like how almost taboo it is when this family is used to it, and it's nothing new for them, and they're comfortable with it. So it's just weird how they kind of push that. I'm not sure if that's going to translate to Rachel's season, if that's going to be like a storyline or something, but today's episode, they definitely kind of played it up to that. Kind of making Nick uncomfortable with constantly asking him about dating colored women, and him constantly explaining that he's been on dates with them, one date, usually with all of them. And Nick, it's not a colored thing, believe me. Women like Liz and many others can verify. You've been on one date and ended and didn't go past that with all sorts of women, colored or not. So no surprise there with Nick. But the mother's conversation with Nick was kind of very, almost like a teacher-ish and a student-pupil. It was very kind of serious, and she had asked him about his dating history with a colored woman, and it just seemed kind of, I don't know, not natural in a sense, the way they were talking. The mother seemed, like I said, accepting, but just didn't flinch or didn't really have a different expression. Just basically one kind of monotone approach. So that didn't seem like it went great. And considering Rachel and Nick had great chemistry throughout, it's surprising that this seemed to be like their most awkward encounter / date, where it was this hometown visit to Dallas that just didn't seem quite right from the start and didn't add to the momentum these two had already. Next hometown date, and the one America's been waiting for, is Corinne's. So we now know that we knew that she lived in Florida, but we now know her surroundings. So the first thing she does is take Nick on a shopping spree. And the shopping spree is to an extravagant mall / store where Corinne proudly announces that she knows everyone and she shops there all the time, and apparently she does. She makes Nick try on about a zillion different clothing items, as well as herself. One of which was like sweatpants, and they were just about $800-900. So yeah, Corinne has a very, very expensive taste, and clearly Nick is not used to that. He's from Waukesha, okay, not Miami, and the lavish shopping that's done there. So he will not be fitting in, and you could see his face, an uncomfortable look that he had on his face every time that she made him try on something or a mention of a price for an item was. For her, it was like spending literally change, and for Nick, it was like his life savings were going out the window. So these two clearly wouldn't work out in the long run because they can't relate on that level, because they come from two different backgrounds. Clearly, Corinne is used to the lavish lifestyle. So after that whole mall visit, and she did buy him an outfit, probably more than he makes. It costs more for the outfit than he makes in a month. Considering what's his job now? Does he have one? Who knows? Is he like a professional bachelor? Seems like it. That's his gig. So they go to visit the family. This is the most anticipated moment. So we meet the father, Jim, who shares the same name as me. Then you meet the mother. And, of course, you get to meet Raquel, who is everyone's favorite, and Corinne's younger sister, too, who probably uttered the most, smartest line. And she just, when she pointed out to her parents that Nick is older, so then he must be more mature. Yes, Corinne's younger sister, you are spot on. And that's probably why your sister's a bad fit for him. So Nick, ironically, while Corinne's talking to her father, he's chatting to Raquel. He's almost getting the nanny's approval. I know we wanted to see her and have her be featured, but why is he asking her permission, Raquel's, not the mother's? It just seems a bit out of place. The father, meanwhile, his biggest issue was, can Nick support his baby princess? That is the biggest issue. Does Nick have the funds? Does he, given a lifestyle where Corinne could be a stay-at-home mom and Nick could work? The answer to this is simple. No. Nick can't provide for Corinne. He can't measure up to her expectations, and certainly he cannot keep up with her cash flow. So that's coming to the end of the road. End of the road, and I can't. Yeah. Boyz II Men, another reference 2 weeks in a row. But certainly an end to the road when it comes to that relationship lasting any bit longer than they leave the show. So they do have a dinner together, and they have some fancy olives that Corinne's father is oddly proud of. Some expensive olives or something. That's just how it went. The conversation between Nick and her father was interesting. Certainly, we didn't see Rachel's father, and he was a lot tougher on Nick than Raven's father. And the conversation was just about him being able to support Corinne financially. That is the most important thing to these people, is discussing finances, which, if you're rich, why is that an issue? Yeah, you want to see if your daughter is going to live the same lifestyle she's used to, but she's got money, right? She runs the business, quote unquote. Why is it so important for Nick to support her? And that's what they were kind of angling at, which was unfair to Nick, because by no means why should he be supporting a woman unless they're married, and especially one that has her own money and claims to run a business. That should have been the last of conversations and not even been considered a conversation on this date. So, yes, this one's not to be forgotten. This big fat Greek pre-wedding ends with Corinne telling Nick, she reveals to him that she's in love with him. So our first girl of the day is Corinne, and that tells him that she loves him. Imagine that. Who would have thought that Corinne would have been the one that tells him she's in love? So that earned her some points. You could see the reaction of Nick was a bit surprising and kind of happy. Considering his two other women he was just with didn't do that. So I guess Corinne kind of made up for her past mistakes with that. So that was her date. And finally, a trip to Canada. Nick's passport must have been updated because he was heading to Montreal, Quebec to meet Vanessa. And it was raining in Canada. So Nick came equipped with a umbrella. So she meets him at a park, and she suggests they go meet her students at her school. Nick was kind of worried about meeting her students or meeting her family. Dude, the only thing you should be worried about is all these Canadian chicks that you dumped in the past that might be lingering somewhere around. Okay? Go to the school. And he did. We find out that Vanessa is a special needs teacher for adults, 21 and over, and they just welcomed her with balloons at the school and just gave her a warm welcome. And then Nick joined them, and they were just working on some classwork apparently, and some activities. Seemed like they were very sweet people, and they took to Nick actually. Nick seemed to form a bond with a few of them, so that must have made Vanessa happy. It's really rewarding what she does for her career. I mean, this is a very, very, just not only classy, but this is an accomplished woman. She speaks multiple languages. She has a very great, rewarding job. She's too good for Nick, and she's just gorgeous. So she is too good for him in that sense. So she's a great special needs teacher, and that goes a long way. So now she explains to him that her parents are divorced, and there's two different family visits they're going to do. She's close to both of them, but the parents aren't close to each other. So first they're gonna visit her mother, and they visit her, and there's about 150 people there, waiting, like a who's who of the mother's side of the family. And to most people, that would probably be daunting and kind of maybe freak them out. But not to Nick. I mean, he's got 105 siblings himself, so this should be nothing to deal with a big family. And what was noticeable is that they were going after Nick right away. Like, they seem very skeptical. She's got a younger brother, Vanessa does, who refuses to let her to have her heart broken again. And the older Mama Bear, sister of Vanessa, was certainly very worried about her sister. And she almost gave a warning that if Nick messes up, or she was skeptical of him, if he does anything, he'll be in big trouble. She'll cut him, probably. Maybe not. I don't know. But it seemed that way. And the family's very protective, basically. And they didn't trust Nick. And the biggest thing they kept on raising was that she lives in Canada and he lives in the U.S. And they almost expected him to move there, which doesn't quite work there. And the mother had reservations when she asked Nick what he cares about her daughter, or what's the thing that stands out to him. He said when she came out of the limo, when he saw her, how gorgeous she was. And the mother did not want to hear that. She did not care about her daughter's looks impressing Nick. So Nick was put in place. He was served. He got served at that point. The mother definitely had reservations about Nick, and it definitely made him feel uncomfortable, as he had mentioned that he kind of didn't expect to get that reaction, and the vibe wasn't all that welcoming for Nick. That's a big family, and they were all very skeptical of him. So Nick had some navigating to do there and try to explain himself, which he kind of did. So that was the mother's house visit, and there's one more, and that would be Vanessa's father. And there was just only two people at that house. It was Vanessa's father and apparently maybe her stepmother or his girlfriend, whoever it was. It was a significant other of the father. And that one was the one that made the night. Talk about Nick having a conversation with the father. And the father made Nick squirm. Like, literally, there might have been a puddle left on that couch after Nick got off of it, because the father just kept on grilling him, calling him out on his crap, and just giving it to Nick. Especially when Nick made the mistake of attempting to ask for the blessing for the daughter. And the father not only did not give him a blessing, but he asked Nick if Nick had asked for the blessing to the other parents. And Nick confirmed, and the father was not pleased. He really lectured him. He gave him the business. He told him how to get it done. That father just owned him. So Nick was a little was squirming in that seat, just completely powerless, and he was given the business for sure. So Nick, not a great impression there. So that was the lasting memory of the show of Vanessa's father just going off. And then when he tells Vanessa that Nick asked for the blessing, but then he also told her that Nick confirmed that he asked for the blessing for the other parents. And then Vanessa was clearly not thrilled by this. She was really disappointed and thrown off by Nick again. So that didn't end in a great way either, where they just leave on a sour note. And who would have thought Corinne would be the one to say I love you? And kind of as odd as that date was, just like kind of wacky and kooky, it ended the best. So Nick heads back to Brooklyn, where that's apparently New York's his favorite place, so that's where he goes. And that's where the decision will be for the final roast, who's going to the overnight dates. So we see Nick kind of chatting things up and prepping in the room and getting ready for the roast ceremony and who is going to go. And of course we see a woman struggling, walking in heels, walking up to Nick's door. Now last time we saw that, it was Corinne. This time it seems it was teased that Vanessa would be kind of confronting Nick because of how she felt after that date and how it kind of turned out, the hometown. The woman's walking in these heels. We see a door knock. Nick goes to the door, opens it, and it is Andy Dorfman at the door. Yes, the Andy that introduced Nick to us for the first time for the Bachelor franchise. That was the one that his first go around where he fought for the affection of Andy with Josh Murray. So Andy pays a visit to Nick, and that's teased and to be continued. Of course we get that, because that's the way they've been establishing things from now on. The last couple seasons, actually. So that concludes the episode. To be continued. It was a heck of a cliffhanger, probably better than any roast ceremony would offer. And Andy Dorfman arrives. What does that mean? What is that going to change? Is she there to stay and try to fight for Nick? Is she there to do something else? Well, in my opinion, I think, and that's going to be revealed next week, and we even see the clips of next week, it's basically Nick in Antarctica, which is probably actually somewhere in Scandinavia or maybe Iceland, wherever they're going. One of those spots, but it's in the dead of cold and winter and a lot of snow. But yeah, it looks like Antarctica. And Nick seems to be alone, and all the clips show, and he's just like meandering around and trying to warm up with like a fire, self-made fire. Probably not by him, but that is the tease. But you don't see much more, really, besides him kind of looking and trying to decide what's going to happen next. So what does Andy Dorfman do? What's her purpose? Well, this one's easy. She's not coming on the show. She's not coming in the, 11th hour to try to win him over. She's just coming to give him advice. And this has been done before. This was done where, even in previous season, JoJo had a former cast member come. And, the producers kind of tease it as if, he's trying to get on the show. But it was just to give advice. That's what his stuff is for. Just to give us some advice, bring in a person from the past, use that cliffhanger and tease the hell out of it for a week, which they did perfectly. I mean, they utilized Andy Dorfman as good as they could. And probably she's just going to be there for 5 minutes next week and just have a chat about him and help him make a decision, and that'll be it. So much ado about nothing, but the way they pitched it and planned it and, showcased and teased it, seems like there's a lot of significance to it. There really won't. I mean, plus, just think about it. Andy Dorfman lives in New York. She was probably in the neighborhood. The producers call her, hey, stop in. We know Andy loves the spotlight, so of course she would. This was a no-brainer. Definite no-brainer to utilize her and bring her on board and see what she has to offer, right? Exactly. So Andy Dorfman makes an appearance and shouldn't be significant. Next week, we're going to get an elimination from the start. And I expected Corinne to go. And ultimately, I still do think that it will be either her or Rachel going. I'm still unsure. I think maybe Corinne bought herself another day. And we know Rachel's faith, that she's done with the show. She's going to be the Bachelorette. So for some reason, I just think that her date was a bit awkward, and Corinne saying I love you gives her an extra week. So in that case, I say Rachel's the one he bids farewell to and says bye. So that should be it early on for Rachel next week. But Corinne survives for just a short while. Interesting episode. My rating for it would be a 10 out of 10. It just had good elements. Like sometimes you can be a hit or miss with these hometowns. Like you either suck and are boring and dull, or they're actually interesting, exciting, kind of lead to some drama and, things that lead to the elimination. Decisions are made based on hometowns. But this one was interesting. You had 4 very different families from different backgrounds and different situations and different approaches. So I thought it was a really good episode. And that Andy Dorfman thing, even though it's not much significance, is held to it. It carries a little weight, but it was still a great cliffhanger. And people who are maybe less aware or not as in tune might think something more of it. So this was something that shocked many, even surprised me. But it was a well-used plant by the Bachelor producers. So great episode, I thought. It was a 10 out of 10. Interesting, kept my interest, had a lot of good elements to it. And we shall see next week what happens in Antarctica or some cold country in Europe where they probably are headed to. We will know next week what exactly is on the agenda on The Bachelor. So for now, that will conclude this episode. And we are going down the home stretch. Only 3 episodes left of The Bachelor. We'll have the overnights next week, where we're down to 3. And by the end of that one, we'll be down to 2. So we will have 2 eliminations next week. And then we're going to have the Women Tell All. And then is the final on, I believe, March 13th, possibly. So 3 more weeks of The Bachelor, and that's it. It kind of came down to the end really fast. It went from 12 to 6, and then suddenly 4, and bam, we're hometowns, and now 3. It went quick. Even though it seemed like the show started a while ago, but the last few episodes have been sliding and gliding and going really quick. So the interest is there right now. So for those of you who want to reach out to me and add me on Twitter, I am at JimRKO. That's at JIMRKO. That's on Twitter. Any questions, comments, concerns, whatever you want to talk about, just follow me. Hear more Bachelor content that way. And you can download this podcast by checking out Stitcher or iTunes or just Googling Bachelor Universe. That will probably come up for you. So continue to subscribe and support this podcast. I really appreciate it. And spreading the word, it really helps, guys. Every contribution counts a lot. Even the smallest, such as a follow or just an ad or subscription. It doesn't cost you anything, right? It takes a few seconds to do it. So thanks for that. And we will also, before I go, check out my blog, Bachelor Universe, bacheloruniverse.wordpress.com. Also similar content, get some other stuff maybe during the week that you might not through the podcast. So check both. On that note, we will be back next week to discuss more issues on The Bachelor. But for now, I'm signing off, and you guys take care, and I will see you all, and you will hear from me later. All right. See you, everyone.